Hello, everybody, and welcome to a 2024 election prediction. This election prediction and what I'll be doing over the next few videos, I guess multiple videos to go, because there really isn't much to cover. I might be covering the New York mayoral primary, but really not much to cover. Obviously, the middle of 2021 we're heading into. So what I'm doing is just making a bunch of 2024 election scenarios, having a little fun with that with the new map that came out from the census. Today I'm going to be doing Vice President Harris versus Governor DeSantis, Ron DeSantis versus Kamala Harris, with this new interactive map. And it's going to be, it will be some fairly likely scenarios, then it'll be some kind of far reaching scenarios or some ones that I just am interested in doing. Like I could do just Mitt Romney versus Joe Biden, or Nikki Haley versus Joe Biden, Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris, or Ben Shapiro or AOC, all sorts of people that I would really be interested in making a scenario on that are somewhat mainstream and do have a chance of getting the nomination. Obviously, I don't think Mitt Romney will be the Republican nominee, but I guess people that are somewhat mainstream. So that is what I'll be focusing on. So anyway, let's just get right to the scenario. So this is going to be Kamala Harris versus Ron DeSantis. And I do think this is going to be a close race. But anyway, let's get right to the safe states. So obviously our home state, California, Hawaii, Washington, and I'm really not going to be too specific, so Oregon will be safe. New York, all these that we would expect. Like I said, I'm not characterizing New Jersey as likely just because there's really not much of a point. So I'm pretty sure those are all the safe states unless I missed any, which people can call me out on or I'll remember later. And I'll be doing the same with Republicans, so we'll just characterize Alaska and then all of these states, of course, that are really going to be going to the Republicans. I'm pretty confident about. Okay. So I guess this is what you could say. I could characterize Iowa or one of these states, but really I'm not going to, because why not? Let's make it interesting. Actually, you know what? I will characterize Colorado, though, as safe. Anyway, not New Mexico, just because it's a tiny bit more, but you really could characterize New Mexico. So it's about 191 to 125. Obviously, Democrats have an electoral advantage with the safe states. Kamala Harris, I do think she'll carry the safe Democrat states. She is not as, or maybe she is perceived to be very liberal, to be a very liberal Democrat or a very liberal candidate, which I do think will hurt her, especially with the Rust Belt and toss-up states. And Ron DeSantis is from a toss-up state. He is fairly popular in Florida, but I do think that her more policies to the left will hurt her, especially in many of the toss-up states, especially in the Rust Belt state, especially since you obviously have the contrast of her more liberalism to Joe Biden's moderacy, which is why I think Joe Biden did well in the 2020 election, and I do think it'll hurt her, because I'm not sure. I really am not sure if America is ready for some candidate that is that liberal. And I don't say that as, a way to disenfranchise her. I just say that as my take on it. But that doesn't mean I won't have her winning. I just think it's going to be a harder path for her to win. But anyway, let's get to likely Democrat states. That'll obviously be New Mexico, Virginia. You could characterize Virginia as safe on a good day. And I won't characterize New Hampshire because she is a much different candidate than Joe Biden. And I don't think I'm going to characterize any other states unless I'm thinking maybe Maine at large, but I really won't, because I do think it's a much different area with Maine at large with Kamala Harris compared to Joe Biden, where Joe Biden really can appeal to the Northeast voters, the Rust Belt voters, really a lot of the working white collar work over there. But anyway, let's just get a likely DeSantis states. That'll be Iowa and Ohio, and I guess Maine at large. I think he can appeal to the man at large, similar to Trump. So I would give him that part of Maine, and I don't think Kamala Harris will be too liked over there. As I said, she has a more liberal appearance, and just a more liberal person in general. I mean, that's not really an appearance. That's what she is. I mean, That's just the way it is. So I do think that will hurt her. But anyway, that's all the likely states I'm going to be having. Let's just get to the lean states because those are more interesting. I think that, let's see. I do think that Nevada will be a lean Democrat state. Um, I know that it has in its state actually gone more to the left with the Democrat Party, and people will think that that will hurt Nevada. I'm interested to see what happens in 2022, but it does have the same sort of appearance as North Carolina, where it is usually a close state, but there is a slightly higher proportion of Democrats to Republicans in the state, almost always. So, as it's always a close state, there's always a slight edge of Democrats in that state, which is why I'll characterize it. And I still think Nevada will still go to the Democrats in 2024. 2028 could be the turning point for it. But I will have it going to the Democrats and to Kamala Harris still, although she does have a harder appeal to working class voters. I'm also going to give her Nebraska second. Actually, no, I'm not going to give her Nebraska second because I realized it was DeSantis and not Trump. If it was Trump, I'd give her Nebraska second, but I do think DeSantis has a much stronger suburban appeal. I don't think he'll win in Virginia, or any of this other super considered suburban states. But Nebraska second, he definitely has a chance at. Virginia has a chance, possibly, but I really don't think he'll go for it anyway. But it's definitely been trending more to the left. Anyway, let's see. I'm going to be hard characterizing Arizona and Georgia just because how close they were. In 2020, now I expected Arizona for Biden versus Trump. Now I'm pretty sure I expected it to go a few points to Biden. It was a very, very small margin, a much smaller margin than what anybody expected. If you add up all the little percent margins that Biden got to 270 by, Trump was off by a combined total like 1.1% in all of those states, and he would have been the president, or he would have been the president right now. So it is a close state. It is trending blue, but I do think DeSantis will actually do have some appeal there. He is Hispanic, I'm pretty sure, or south of the United States. I'm not entirely sure where he's from, though, what country or what ethnicity he has. I'll leave it at that for the Democrats, just because I really want to. I mean, I'll leave it at that just because I want to make some leeway, make some space. Now we'll go to lean Republican. Lean Republican. Florida's a lean Republican state. Just because that's what he's the governor of, and if he does win in 2022, I think there's a very high chance. I mean, winning 2 elections in Florida, there's a high chance he'll win again. And Florida, similar thing with Nevada, slightly higher percent of Republicans and Democrats, and a lot of the Puerto Ricans and Venezuelans in Miami-Dade County have been trending to the right, especially what we saw in the 2020 demographic changes, and I made a video on that right after the election. Let's see. So really what we have is the 3 southern states that have been shifting to the left of Arizona, Texas, Georgia, the Rust Belt, to northeastern, and North Carolina, which I'll give lean to DeSantis at the moment. But the rest of the states, I'm going to make tilt. I'm going to make them tilt. You could say Maine at large, possibly lean Democrat, but I do think it'll be closer, but I'll put that at tilt just because I just showed where I'm going to go anyway with that. I do think Kamala Harris will lose support compared to Joe Biden in Maine at large, especially due to all this inflation, what you would say is going on right now, but I'm not really sure how much policy will affect the 2024 election. I do think it's going to be much more on the culture than, I guess you could say, tax rates, which what it was with Mitt Romney versus Obama or Obama versus McCain. Definitely more focused on the economy. I do think 2024 going forward, Republicans versus Democrats, it'll be more focused on social policies and the culture of the country. And I don't know how that will bode with the people in Maine at large, but I do still see it going to the Democrats. Now, I also see Arizona, if it lets me click. Well, I'll get back to that. Georgia will go tilt to the Democrats, to Kamala Harris. Actually, I'll get back to Arizona anyway. It had a major shift in 2020. I mean, 2020, Trump won it by 5 points in 2016. 2020, Biden won it by 0.2%. that's a major shift. And if that trend continues the way it has with what you would say what Stacey Abrams is doing there, then I would leave it at tilt just because it is still a close state. But I do see it being very hard for DeSantis winning there, although he does have a better suburban appeal and his state borders Georgia. It is a different dynamic, and I do think it's going to be hard for DeSantis to win. Obviously, I'll be interested in seeing the polls, although I do put much less weight on them after the 2020 election and getting a lot of the polls wrong, which I did a video on, and they got a lot of the polls wrong in 2016, 2018. So it is hard. You really have to go with your gut and common sense on a lot of these predictions now, but, I'm perfect. I'm happy to do that. Also, tilt Democrat. Actually, I'll go to some tilt Republicans. You got to make it exciting. Tilt Republican. Texas will still tilt Republican. That might be the last time it goes Republican. Maybe 2028 if they're able to grow with Latino, Hispanic, whatever you'd like to call them, people in Texas. They did make gains in these southern counties down here, although not many people live down there. It's really the growing urban population in Texas, which is shifting it to the left. It's not the people moving from California to Texas. Those people are actually becoming Republicans and voting to the Republican side. So it's going to be interesting to see how Texas balances itself going forward. But I still see Republicans being able to hold on to it, and Ron DeSantis being able to carry the state again. Also, Wisconsin will go. I think it'll go fairly easy, maybe 2 to 3 points to Ron DeSantis, and Pennsylvania go 1 to 2 points to Ron DeSantis, just because I just don't see Kamala Harris having that appeal in these states, in these Rust Belt states that Trump and Ron DeSantis have, and they've been shifting to the right as Trump won them in 2016. And you go 8 years into the future without a Joe Biden. I don't think he'll run. If he does run, then maybe it'll be closer. But I just see it hard for Harris to win in these states. Just using my common gut instinct, she did come out against fracking, although that was an issue. She did say she was in favor of banning fracking. And people like to bring back what other politicians said 4 years later, and that I don't think that will go well in Rust Belt states. But let's go back to the bright side for the Democrats. If it lets me choose Arizona, here we go, finally. I actually think Arizona will be closer than Georgia. I think Arizona's balancing out the way it has. I really don't see it shifting much more to the left, the way that you could say Colorado has, at least for now. Harris may win it by 1 point, anywhere from half a point to a point. It's still going to be a close race. It'll narrow up with the Hispanic turnout. Those demographics have been shifting to the right, and they will continue to shift to the right. I do think the black community will shift to the right, although the margins are still yet to be determined, because if it's just a point, then that doesn't make much of a difference. And I even think if Harris is running, it'll still shift to the right, although she is more of an intersectional candidate. I still see, I guess what you could say is communities of color shifting to the right as they had done under Trump. I think that trend will somewhat continue. Okay, so I think that New Hampshire. Now, so we're down to Michigan and we're down to, I'll have DeSantis winning, Nebraska second, just because I do think he has that suburban support or suburban appeal that Trump simply didn't have, where DeSantis comes across as somewhat of a populist, but also somewhat of a moderate-ish who is, much more, toned down in his rhetoric when you compare him to Trump, although it is hard to compare people to Trump. And I do think that will have an effect on suburban populations in Nebraska. But anyway, let's get back to, and I think he'll beat Harris, and I don't think Harris will do well in the suburbs, although she'll win Virginia, likely early, and doesn't really matter. But we're down to Michigan and New Hampshire. If DeSantis wins New Hampshire, then it'll go to state delegations. But let's just see. So what I'm going to do with New Hampshire, and who knows what those will be at the time. So let's see. So I think... So this is a hard one. I think that it's funny because Kristen Sununu is popular in New Hampshire. I still think New Hampshire will go to Kamala Harris, although very, 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 very slim margins. Probably Clinton 2016 margins, 0.2, 0.1, 0.3%. It's going to be very close. I do think DeSantis will make a run for Kamala Harris's money in New Hampshire. with a suburban appeal, and I just think that that's going to happen. We'll see if this is the actual election, the way the two candidates running together against each other in 2024. I guess around 3 years now. The race will be on, but yeah, I still see New Hampshire going to the Democrats, although by a very small margin. Anyway, we're down to Michigan. So I do think it'd be a close race, and that just mirrors the polarization in the country. But when we get down to Michigan, this is when it does get very, very hard, very, very hard to look at and determine. And when you look at Michigan and you look at the trend of Rust Belt states, Gary Peters barely winning his Michigan Senate race against John James. Michigan did go more to the left than any of the other 3 Rust Belt states against Joe Biden. He won it by about 2 points, 2.5 points, if I remember correctly. This is going to be one of the harder states for DeSantis to pull off. Rust Belt, I mean, I do think vice presidential candidates could matter, but this is going to be a very close state. And if I had to choose today, based on the trends of the country and based on increased Republican support and African Americans moving out of the Rust Belt down to the South, which is also affecting the urban populations, if this trend continues, I see it going to Ron DeSantis, and he'll barely clinch the presidency at 280. Obviously, this is all malleable, and it probably will change as we get closer to 2024, which is 3 years away. But I see DeSantis having a very small victory against Harris, and I honestly think DeSantis is the Republicans' best candidate, maybe Trump, because he did win an election. He won the presidency in 2016, so obviously he's electable because he was elected. But DeSantis is also a very strong person as well. I think much stronger than any of the other establishment Republicans like Haley or even Cruz. But he'll win against Harris, but it'll be a small victory. But he will nonetheless be president for at least 4 years if this map holds true and the candidates hold true. So anyway, let's just take a look at the new map. And it's honestly, the 2016 map, except Georgia and Arizona went to Harris instead of the Republicans, or the Democrats instead of the Republicans. But there you have it. 280, 258, DeSantis wins it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or comment in the comment section. If you think I was wrong on a certain state, I'll do my best at getting back to you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to continue pushing the content out as we head into the summer and I have more free time to get it there. And I hope you guys enjoy. Please share the video. Excuse me. And, yeah, I have nothing else to say. Stay tuned for more videos and make sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you all so much and have a great day.